allocation to NATO, and Europeans are talking about what they can do differently. Where does that leave Canada in terms of our role in NATO and our alliance to the U.S.?
I just want to remind people that in 2015, when we formed government, the importance that our Prime Minister put on multilateralism, and especially our support to NATO. In fact, I actually put it in my mandate letter, and this is one of the reasons why, when we did put our defense policy together, it focused on what type of defense policy is needed that's going to support multilateralism and our support to NATO. Our 70% increase in our defense investment has allowed us to now invest in the right capabilities that allows us to provide the right contributions to NATO. And those contributions are quite substantial, with leading a battle group in Latvia, which we're alongside with the U.S. as well, the British and the Germans, but also we're also leading the NATO training mission in Iraq for a second year as well. So we're working on how do we step up. But this is a discussion that we've had for a very long time, and many nations are stepping up.
I guess my other question is, though, with the Americans and the Europeans, we have ties to both of those groups, and they're sort of diverging a bit. We're in the middle. So how do you navigate that?
No, we've been having actually these discussions almost every defense ministerial. And what we wanted, the discussions that we're having is how can they be complementary? Because as we're all part of the transatlantic alliance, but at the same time, European nations need to be able to have a collaborative approach as well. So one of the things that was very important to us is making sure that we're able to move our troops around to the various nations. So the infrastructure changes that potentially might be needed. So these are the things that we've been encouraging, how they can be the European priority on for their defense relationship, that they're complementary to NATO.
How much do you think the tension between the U.S. and the Europeans and NATO is going to take? How much time do you think that's going to take to discuss at your upcoming NATO meeting?
Well, I would say I wouldn't call attention. I said these are important discussions that we need to have. The U.S. support to NATO is extremely important, and in fact, if you look at the last few years, the support has actually increased. If you look at the footprint in Europe as well, and the enhanced forward battle groups is just one example, but we're also doing a lot more training exercises to support the various programs. And so the actual tangible work that's happening on the ground has demonstrated how nations are stepping up, including the U.S. And Canada is also doing its part on that as well.
Is NATO brain dead, like Mr. Macron used to say?
NATO is the strongest military alliance that we have had. And one of the things
from the United States that used to be the brain and the brawn, now they're not there anymore.
One thing is it's important to have these discussions. Some of the conversations that U.S. has raised are important ones to all nations to look within, to making sure that are they doing their part. We have done that with our defense policy, have increased not only our spending, because as the Secretary General always states, you need the 3 C's. Cash is good, but you got to invest the cash in the right capabilities, right? And then you have to be able to contribute those capabilities for operations. And Canada has stepped up in a significant way. So we're leading by example in this regard, but also the tangible steps that the U.S. have actually made through, even though we're having those very important discussions, has actually demonstrated their support, very strong support to NATO.
How can you have cohesion in NATO when all the nation states members are not agreeing on how real of a threat or how important of a threat Russia is? Nobody agrees on that.
One thing we all agree upon is the importance of our alliance. In fact, we do look at the importance. The message that we send that was always is what unified. We know the threat that Russia has posed. In fact, at the NATO Defense Minister, we have discussions where we get together and talk about the nations that are supporting Ukraine. And this is something that ourselves, the U.S. and the British, have been working very closely on, to making sure that we're coordinating our efforts in Ukraine. So that's something very significant. Every defense minister, we have had that meeting. So we are sending a very strong message, and we send a very strong message, and we're looking at the significant challenge that Russia has been posing to stability in that region. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Est-ce que... Non, mais... moi, ce que je dirais, c'est que celui qui n'a jamais péché lance la première pierre. Est-ce que c'est pas arrivé à M. Blanchet ou d'autres de une fois perdre un peu, en fait, de patienter un peu? C'est arrivé. Moi, ça m'est arrivé une fois. Honnêtement, j'aurais pas dû le faire. Je le regrette. Mais
Je m'excuse si je vous fais répéter, mais j'étais pas là. Donc, le fait que M. Legault dise, moi, je parle avec M. Trudeau, moi, j'en ai rien à faire, le lieutenant.
Mais absolument qu'ils parlent avec M. Trudeau. Ils ont une ligne directe. Et ils se parlent directement, ils n'ont pas besoin d'un lieutenant pour ça. Par contre, le lieutenant, lui, est en contact avec des membres du gouvernement, des membres de la société civile, des maires, des gens du secteur économique. Le lieutenant rapporte aussi des messages, rapporte cette sensibilité québécoise-là. Et moi, j'aurai le privilège, comme leader parlementaire, d'être assis à côté du premier ministre tous les jours.
Vous ne trouvez pas que l'accueil est peut-être un petit peu froid de la part de Québec? Vous n'auriez pas aimé qu'on...
C'est un nouveau mécanisme qui s'installe. C'est quelque chose de nouveau pour le gouvernement actuel. Il y a une tradition que ce poste-là existe. Et moi, je le fais avec beaucoup de volonté, une main tendue. Comme Québécois, je veux travailler à l'avancement du Québec. Et on a tous les deux, les gouvernements du Québec et nous, le même objectif. Alors, on va le faire ensemble.
Pouvez-vous expliquer un peu comment s'est passée la décision? Comment est-ce qu'on a décidé de recréer ce poste-là dont M. Trudeau n'a pas voulu pendant 4 ans? Est-ce qu'il y avait une grosse pression du caucus québécois?
Le mécanisme de décision appartient au premier ministre. Là, mais ce qui est clair, c'est qu'on a tiré des conclusions au lendemain de l'élection. Et M. Trudeau, dès le lendemain, a dit on va donner une voix plus forte au Québec. Et il l'a fait à travers la nomination de 10 ministres. Des ministres qui détiennent des portefeuilles hautement stratégiques et aussi la nomination d'un lieutenant. Donc, il avait promis de réagir et il a agi.
Mais vous lui avez dit que ça s'imposait et il vous a écouté?
Il y a plusieurs personnes qui ont donné leur point de vue. À mes yeux, le rôle du lieutenant était important. Je l'ai communiqué absolument, comme d'autres personnes l'ont communiqué également. Mais en bout de ligne, c'est lui qui prend la décision. Et il avait promis et il a maintenu sa promesse.
Vous revenez en chambre seulement le 5 décembre, mais il y a une grève au CN en ce moment. On panique, manque de propane. Est-ce que, comme leader parlementaire, vous pouvez déjà commencer à préparer une loi de retour spéciale?
Écoutez, il y a des négociations en cours. Ce sont des négociations importantes et on suit ça près pour les détails. Je vous invite à en parler à la ministre du Travail.
Non, mais je parle de préparer un projet de loi de retour au travail. Pour forcer le retour au travail, ce serait
tout ce
votre
que je peux
travail.
dire, parce que vous avez ici des personnes qui travaillent très fort sur ce dossier-là. Alors, je vous invite à parler avec eux là-dessus.
C'est bon.
OK.
Merci beaucoup. Yes.
Merci.
Implementing laws, that you're open to suggestions that are coming from groups that are primary stakeholders. And all we've said is we are open to a conversation about that. But I would say to you, look, this law was put into place to replace the environmental assessment process that was gutted under Stephen Harper in 2012. It represents a significant improvement in terms of how we assess these projects on a go-forward basis. A big focus is on ensuring at the front end that we are flagging issues of concern so that we can address those early on in the process. It will enable us to ensure that good projects proceed and that projects that are not good projects are either reformatted or they don't go ahead.
Is there room to modifying the implementation without making it useless?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, part of going through a process to ensure that you're implementing properly is to listen to thoughts and concerns as we move forward to ensure that we're doing this in the best manner possible, in the most efficient manner possible. It doesn't necessarily mean strengthening or weakening. It means doing it right.
The Prime Minister today met with Mayor of Vancouver, Kennedy Stewart, and he said that he doesn't want to be lumped in with all of this Western separatism. As a minister from BC, can you give us a sense of how the people of BC are feeling when it comes to this Western separatist?
So I think that perhaps it's being mischaracterized a little bit in terms of some of the issues in the Federation. People talk a lot about Western alienation. I think they miss the point on that. British Columbia is very different from Alberta and Saskatchewan. Manitoba, in terms of the electoral outcomes, was very different from Alberta and Saskatchewan. What we're really talking about here is the nexus between fighting climate change and environmental protection and the needs and aspirations, the economic future of hydrocarbon-producing regions. And any thoughtful government needs to find pathways that address the concerns of people in Alberta and Saskatchewan and in Newfoundland and Labrador. At the same time, the bottom line is we need to meet the targets that are informed by science. That is exactly what I'm going to be doing going forward.
But can you give us examples of where you think you can tweak it? Can you give us examples of where you think you can tweak it?
I'm not going to give you examples of where I'm going to tweak it. I'm actually interested in thoughts and suggestions that are coming forward from stakeholders. So.
I think the question, Mr. Wilkinson, is because we haven't necessarily read the fine detail of the 400 pages of the law. You have. Where in the implementation are there things, like are we talking number of days that a project is studied? Are we talking routes? Are we don't know. Can you help
So
us?
there are elements in the law that are laid out in the legislation that was actually passed. Those are not going to be changed. But there are elements of how you actually go through the development of policies that are enabled under the Act. I'm not going to get into the specifics around what we might change and what we might do, because that's the whole point of actually having conversations. We're looking for input, and we're going to look for input going forward. We're open to a discussion around how we best implement the Act. That's what we're open to. We are not amending the law.
Just talking and not changing anything.
Thank you very much.
Alors, bonjour. Oui, je vais faire une petite déclaration. Et puis, je suis ici avec ma collègue, la ministre du Travail, la nouvelle ministre du Travail, Mme Tassi. Et puis, bien sûr, c'est concernant la grève des Teamsters et avec le CN. Je vais répéter ce que j'ai dit hier, c'est que nous sommes complètement saisis de ce défi de retourner au travail. On comprend à quel point c'est important pour l'économie de notre pays d'avoir un chemin de fer qui fonctionne. Et CN, c'est la plus grande compagnie de chemin de fer qui transporte énormément de biens à travers tout le pays. Alors, on comprend l'ampleur de la situation et on encourage les deux côtés, les Teamsters et CN, de continuer de négocier, ce qui est le cas en ce moment. Notre chef médiateur est avec eux et la discussion se poursuit en ce moment avec l'espoir de trouver une solution le plus rapidement possible. On est un parti qui croit dans la négociation collective. On est dans la 3e journée de la grève. On veut que ça se termine le plus tôt possible. Nous avons été en contact avec nos homologues provinciaux. J'étais sur le téléphone ce matin avec M. Bonnardel pour parler de la situation. Je sais qu'il a passé ces informations-là au premier ministre Legault. Nous sommes également en contact avec les deux groupes du côté du travail et du côté de CN.
I've been in this building in 1963, so nobody was born of your kind. So I came to see it again.
Qu'est-ce que vous êtes venu faire?
Non, je suis venu parce que j'avais quelqu'un à rencontrer, mais je ne sais pas qui je vais rencontrer. Alors, je ne peux pas rien vous dire.
Un premier ministre?
Je ne sais pas, je pense pas.
Vous êtes pas ici pour voir M. Trudeau?
Non.
Si vous le voyez, qu'est-ce que
Il
vous
va dire
dites
bonjour, comment ça va, je vais le féliciter sur son cabinet, puis je vais lui souhaiter bonne chance.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de son cabinet?
C'est un bon cabinet.
Beaucoup de Québécois?
Ah, de partout.
What do you think of the cabinet, Mr. Kretchen?
It's a good cabinet.
Appointing a deputy prime minister, though, Mr. Freeland, I think you had
I had one all the time. I had Sheila Copps. I had Herb Gray. I had John Manley. It's useful.
Et avez-vous des conseils pour son gouvernement minoritaire?
Non.
Des conseils de survie, vous qui avez survécu à plein de choses?
J'étais le secrétaire parlementaire de Mike Pearson, le premier ministre du Canada, en 1964 et 65, quand Réal Cowett avait la balance du pouvoir. Ensuite, j'étais secrétaire parlementaire du ministre des Finances. Alors, il fallait... On leur parle. Et puis, on survivait. Et en 65, on a fait des élections pour essayer d'avoir une majorité. Puis on avait gagné un siège seulement. On avait ça pour rien. Et j'étais le secrétaire parlementaire de Pearson à l'époque.
Mr. President, it looks like the Bloc Québécois could be one of the parties that the Liberals could end up working with. Do you think it's okay for the Liberals to be working with the separatist parties to prop them up?
You know, they are members of Parliament. And they don't want election. And the Greens don't want election. And the NDP don't want election. And the Tories don't want election. And the Liberals don't want election. So you find a solution. We had it in 63, 65, and 72. And we survived.
Pensiez-vous que ça prenait un lieutenant québécois pour M. Trudeau?
Il n'a pas bougé d'en avoir, il n'avait pas avant. Puis il y en a un, moi j'en ai toujours. Ça dépend. Ils font ça à leur manière. Moi, je ne dis pas quoi faire.
What's your Prime Minister how to deal with the Western alienation?
It was a problem that exists since a long time. I'm the only Liberal who managed to get members elected 3 times in a row in Alberta. So, for Mr. Trudeau, we always had a senator representing Alberta. Saskatchewan. I think BC at one time too. We survived. Now, the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister of all the Canadians, all right? So when you're Prime Minister, you're not Prime Minister for one party. You're Prime Minister for all Canadians. And I'm sure that every Prime Minister understands that.
Les bloquistes comme partenaires de danse pour un gouvernement minoritaire libéral, vous ne trouvez pas ça un peu gênant?
Ils ne veulent pas perdre leurs élections.
Oui, mais pour les libéraux, du point
Non,
de vue
non.
libéraux.
Écoutez, si on fait un bon projet de loi puis ils votent pour nous, est-ce qu'on va dire votez pas pour nous autres parce que vous êtes péquistes, parce que vous êtes séparatistes? Ils sont élus au gouvernement du Canada. Alors, ils vont faire de leur mieux.
Do you think that Mr. Trudeau should appoint a senator from Alberta or someone else who is a non-elected person into cabinet to show the West that he means business?
But he has a lady that is born in Alberta, that her father is a farmer in Alberta. So, but he is the Prime Minister of all Canadians. They decided not to vote for a Liberal. It's not us. I had a debate with Harper 2 weeks ago, privately, but in front of 700 people. And I spoke up my mind. You know, Trudeau bought a pipeline, I told him. I had to defend that in front of the Easterners. Why in the hell he's using the money to buy a pipeline that the oil company don't want to keep? And I said, it's difficult to explain, but he did that to try to sell oil from Alberta. And you said thank you to him.
So you think he's done enough to show the West?
I can talk until tomorrow morning, and I'm in a big rush.
La façon de résoudre ce problème. Je vais vous répéter que nous croyons que c'est très important de respecter la négociation collective. C'est quelque chose qui marche très bien si les deux côtés sont prêts à travailler ensemble. Et nous sommes de l'avis qu'ils sont prêts à travailler ensemble pour trouver une solution.
One of the issues at the table is worker fatigue, which you're working on regulations around that right now. What do you make of that? And also, is there no way to make certain goods like propane an essential service that would require the railways to move that good even as they're still moving?
So I'll say two things. There are a number of issues with respect to work rules that are being discussed between the two sides, where there is a difference between the two sides' views with respect to these work rules, which are really how they get their operations done, how the Teamsters operate to do their jobs as conductors and rail yard workers. We believe, and the issue of work rules touches on fatigue, we believe that, first of all, that they can solve those, but at the same time, as I announced last year, we are looking into the general issue of fatigue. We did it in the case of pilots, and I made the railways aware last year that we were going to look at it for also conductors and train engineers, and we're looking at it on the marine side as well. That is an ongoing separate process that is working its way through so that we can ensure that those people who work in the rail industry that the issue of fatigue, using the best science available today, is addressed properly. I'm not going to get into details about some of the specific products that are carried by CN because they carry a host of products across the country. We are, as I say, focused on trying to get the two sides to resolve their issues through collective bargaining. We are there to help with mediation, and we are confident that that is the best way to find the solution so that we can get CN back to work and all those trains operating and all those products being delivered.
There is a difference between moving propane for hospitals across the country and detergent or something like that, right? You'd agree with that?
There are a lot of products across this country, and we are hearing from all. We are hearing from
out using back to work legislation.
I
don't want to repeat all those talking points. Are you ruling it out?
What I'm telling you is that we believe in the collective bargaining process, and that is what we are focused on because we think that is the best way to get the two sides to find a solution.
C'est une porte ouverte.
Oui, absolument. Absolument.
Pour ce qui est de la sécurité, comment vous allez vous assurer que les réparations soient faites? Il y a eu des déraillements récemment.
Bien, je peux vous dire que depuis cet été, Transport Canada a fait énormément d'inspections sur les failles qui ont été rapportées sur les rails de CMQR et c'est un processus qui va continuer. Nous avons identifié certaines failles et nous sommes assurés que ces failles-là ont été réparées. On les a inspectées et on va continuer de faire ce travail-là.
Vous savez ce qui circule dans les wagons en temps réel? Parce que les maires, si je comprends bien, veulent le savoir.
La politique de ce côté-là, c'est une directive qui s'appelle la directive 36. C'est que les premiers répondants dans toutes les communautés, les municipalités, c'est-à-dire dans les petites municipalités où les maires sont concernés, que les premiers répondants peuvent être informés sur tout ce qui circule. C'est une politique qu'on a mis en place il y a déjà 2-3 ans. On ne peut pas leur dire d'avance quels produits seront là pour des raisons de sécurité, mais ils savent quels produits circulent généralement à travers leur municipalité. Cette politique-là est en place et toutes les municipalités ont été informées.
Il y a des gens qui se demandent à Lac-Mégantic si le pétrole pourrait être transporté à Lac-Mégantic par CP à la suite de cette
Je ne peux pas. Vous allez devoir demander cette question-là. Comme vous savez, CP va acheter CMQR et c'est une chose que je crois est une très bonne nouvelle. CP est un chemin de fer qui est très respecté et je crois que la transition va bien se faire et je veux souligner le fait qu'ils appuient complètement à 100% le fait que nous allons mettre en place une voie de contournement. Ça, c'est un incontournable. Somebody else.
On the Boeing Max?
Yes.
An update on sort of where your transport is?
We're getting there, but as I've said from the beginning, as we've all said, this is something where we want to make sure, first of all, that the 4 issues that are related to it are addressed. A software fix, hardware fix, proper procedures, and proper training. And we're adamant about that. This airplane will not be cleared in Canada until that happens. But on a more global level, we want to make sure that we coordinate the return, hopefully, in the world at the same time. So we are working with other federal regulators, such as the FAA, EASA from Europe, and also the Brazilian authorities, so that we can try to agree at the same time that we all agree that the fix is proper, that all the procedures are proper, that the training is going to be good enough for the pilots before we all say, all right, now we can allow this airplane to fly again. I think that's very important with respect to the confidence that people will have in terms of getting on this airplane again. So there's a massive coordination effort. Quite apart from the validation of the fix, it's important that we coordinate the return in such a way that everybody feels, yes, we've addressed the problem. No, I can't give you timing. I think we have to not be pressured by a deadline of any kind. We have to make sure that this airplane, once the fix is in and we're satisfied with it, that not until then do we clear it for flying.
Do you think the two sides? Do you think the two sides in this?
I think it's really important that we work with local municipal leaders on solutions that are going to make sense for their communities, on working with premiers to make to look for solutions that make sense for provinces. So yes, I'll be meeting with Mr. Kennedy tomorrow to hear more about his proposal, and I know that the Prime Minister was optimistic about looking for solutions with Mr. Kennedy.
Is it something that you're open to?
Absolutely. I'm looking for good solutions on the opiate crisis. I'm interested to see the content of the proposal. I haven't had a chance to actually look at the proposal or speak to Mr. Kennedy, so I'm reluctant to commit, without having seen what it includes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, municipal leaders and municipalities, stakeholders that are living communities often have good ideas that perhaps we're not aware of at the federal government or that need to be expanded in some way. And so I look forward to my meeting with Mr. Kennedy tomorrow to explore expanding safe supply.
One more thing on cannabis, Minister. I know you're new to the file, so you might not be up in this, but a report today on BNN that was saying that the province of Ontario is looking to liberalize the way that they get stores out. Could be up to 1,000 stores in Ontario by the end of 2020. Are you comfortable with them revamping the store situation now and really increasing the ability for Ontarians to get cannabis?
I actually think that the previous Wynne government had a fairly decent plan in terms of distributing cannabis in Ontario, and when the Ford government was elected and clawed back that plan, it actually made it hard for people to access legal supply of cannabis, which then decreased the ability for people to move away from the black market. So I'm looking forward to their progress. Listen, we've always said that this is in the domain of premiers, how they want to distribute cannabis, and there's varieties of systems across the country, but ultimately, if we're going to legalize a substance, then it needs to be accessible in order to reach the goals of the legislation, which was to reduce the harms, provide a safer supply, and make sure that there was better regulations around access. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we've got everything? Okay.
We should not scrub here.
Sorry.
No.
Part of the campaign, and it was something I think there was a consensus reached among parties on. So is that something that, whatever the next step for affordability would be, is that something we'll see soon after that tax cut?
Well, I'm very focused on the message that we got from Canadians. First of all, is to work together with all parliamentarians, but to also focus on issues of affordability, making sure that we continue to build on the strong foundation that we made on the historic investments in housing, in tackling homelessness, but also helping set a good foundation for children with the Canada Child Benefit increases and early learning and childcare. That's also a big part of our agenda, and I look forward to doing that with my new role.
What's next after this first tax cut?
We'll have to find out as things unfold, but I can tell you we're squarely focused on the message that we got from Canadians, which is to focus on affordability issues for families.
Okay, and we've seen municipalities sort of tighten around the country recently on services like Airbnb, and there's a pretty significant study in the summer that I think it said that there was about 30,000 homes taken off the market, which is because of Airbnb itself, which causes more affordability issues. Is there spot, a role for the federal government to play regarding services like this?
Well, I think the federal government's role is to be a strong and reliable and long-term partner. We've demonstrated in the last 4 years that we've done that. The key is to continue that, to increase those investments, to make sure that municipalities and communities can rely on us to really address the housing crisis in this country. We've invested a lot in that, but also tackling homelessness, which is a real issue that we need to continue to tackle, and bring innovation to the sector, incentivize the construction of low-cost rental housing stock, engage the stakeholders to be more innovative, to make sure that we bring that into government, to demonstrate that we will be a partner not just in the funding but also in the innovation piece. And social enterprise is part of that too.
But on Airbnb and similar services, it's this huge business that's making things worse for Canadians. Would the federal government?
Well, as you know, that's we have to be a partner, but being a good partner also means respecting jurisdictions, respecting responsibilities that municipalities and provinces have, which is what that's about.
Do you have any comment on the Somali Canadian?
Yes, I actually I do. It's devastating to hear that both herself and her siblings, but also her late father, were from Ottawa, and they went back to Somalia to do what a lot of Canadians do, which is to go around the world providing leadership on a lot of issues around peacemaking and helping communities to build reconstruction after conflict. And the Elman family has been amazing in contributing that to Somalia, and finding that news was really difficult for a lot of people, including myself, because I know the contributions that family has made and continues to make in Somalia. So it was very disheartening to read that.
Do you know this person personally?
I don't know her personally. I know her sister, Elwa, who was on the shortlist for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I know the work that she's done bravely and courageously to set up a sexual assault crisis center in Mogadishu, the first ever in a long time. And the work she provides to provide shelter to women who are fleeing those situations.
There are many Somali Canadians who originally came here as refugees, perhaps, who have gone back to try to do the kind of work that she was doing. What message do you think this sends for those people?
Well, that's the thing, right? Targeting humanitarian workers is unacceptable, it's meant to intimidate people from making those contributions, which is why we need to appreciate the folks who take that risk and go to those places despite those risks and make a real difference on the ground. I know the Elman family has had a long history of demonstrating Canadian generosity in Somalia and showing what can be done on the ground, civil society. And her sister, Elwad, is doing that now and carrying on the family tradition, and it was difficult to read that news for sure.
Minister Justin, have you got your mandate letter here?
No, not yet.
I'm confused about who has a responsibility for employment insurance.
Minister Qualtrough. Minister Qualtrough, yes.
Okay, so you have, what have you got then?
I have housing, I have CCD, I have the child care issues, the social enterprise, and the Canada's student loan infrastructure, all that.
Okay, so what kind of a budget do you have?
I'll have to get back to you on that, but it's pretty substantial because a lot of that is based on our commitments prior, but also what was in the platform, so it's very important to us. A lot of the items that I will be tackling are very important.
When do you expect to get mandate?
Very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Je vais faire ça. Je vais en parler avec Yves juste pour être sûr.
When do you hope to get your mandate letter for the role?
I'm sure it will come out soon.
What is your job?
What is my job? I am the Member of Parliament for the riding of Waterloo, and I'm the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and
Right,
Youth.
and I know the title, but what do you understand that job to be?
I think it's going to be a matter of ensuring that we're applying the lens of diversity, inclusion, and the youth perspective. A lot of the issues that are facing our country, the challenges, are because young people haven't given them up.
But do you have a department? Do you have a budget?
Well, the details will get sorted out. And I
You
think
don't
as
have a
much as-
department, is the way I understand it. Can
Well,
you
these responsibilities have fallen under Canadian Heritage as well as the Privy Council Office in the past. But it's a matter of there are synergies between these different roles, and they're coming together. And I think there actually is, based on the responses I've heard from the community yesterday and the emails I've received, which I'm looking forward to responding back to. People are looking forward to actually seeing that the government is taking this seriously.
So some people feel you were demoted. Do you feel demoted?
I am really proud to be able to serve the good people of Canada. It's the country I am proud to have been born and raised in, and I'll tell you any opportunity to give back to this country.
Were you demoted?
I think when it comes to the Prime Minister choosing his cabinet, it's his prerogative. These are the same questions I was asked when I was Minister of Small Business and Tourism, when I became the government house leader, and today. But I'll tell you what my focus is. My focus is the citizens of the riding of the Waterloo, as well as these additional responsibilities that the Prime Minister has given me. Sitting at the cabinet table and having these opportunities, I think is important.
Do you expect to have a budget to spend?
We're going to find out all the details. The cabinet was sworn in yesterday. We've just gotten together today, and we'll get into these details. But I can tell anyone who's listening is that the Prime Minister is always approachable, always available. These are areas that we take very seriously, and the fact that it is a responsibility at the cabinet tables tells you that we are going to ensure that when we are making decisions, we are making good decisions not only for today, but for future generations.
And on youth, is the Prime Minister's Youth Council disbanded?
We'll find out. I don't think
don't
so.
know.
I would hope that
Okay.
we would keep the
Thank
Youth Council. I'll definitely have one in Waterloo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
It's a polite way to end this.
Bye. Thank you.
Exactement, et à quel moment ça va être? Nous savons que c'est très important de considérer comment nous pouvons continuer avec notre approche d'améliorer la situation pour la classe moyenne. La réduction en impôts, c'est un de nos premiers objectifs. Donc, on va considérer exactement quand, dans les prochaines journées, mais ça va être bientôt.
Avant les fêtes, donc.
On est en train de considérer quand, mais ça, c'est une question que nous sommes en train de considérer maintenant.
Si on parle de Trans Mountain, avez-vous l'impression que Trans Mountain fait de l'argent ou fait perdre de l'argent?
Nous avons décidé que l'expansion de Trans Mountain est très importante pour notre économie. Ça va donner un avantage pour notre pays économiquement, mais en même temps, avec l'argent, on peut considérer comment nous pouvons accélérer notre approche pour la transition vers une économie plus verte.
Mr. Murno, you've been saying and your government's been saying that the number one thing you're going to bring forward, the first thing you'll do is a middle-class tax cut. If you're not able to get the support of the NDP or the Bloc, let's say they want some spending, are you willing to be flexible on that first priority and do something else?
I think that what we've been really clear on is that Canadians elected us on the basis of making sure that we deal with the economic anxiety that we're facing. That's why we see a reduction in taxes for the middle class as being the first order of business for this government. I'm confident we'll be able to work together with other parties to get towards that conclusion.
How concerned of you are a recession right now? Lots of economists are saying that we could be going into a downturn. Do you think your government has put Canada in a position to be able to withstand any kind of economic downturn?
You know, clearly we've made significant investments over the last 4 years. We found ourselves in a position where we have the lowest unemployment rate we've seen in more than a generation. We always need to be looking towards the future to make sure we're prepared. That's my job as Minister of Finance. So I'll continue to do that. We'll continue to invest in people so that we can have a positive outcome, and we'll make sure that our overall economy is prepared for whatever situation.
Just on the CN strike, how concerned are you about the economic impact to the country with the largest railway on strike right now?
I guess I always want to start with the issue that this is really impacting people. It's impacting farmers. It's a tough challenge that we're obviously facing. It does have an economic impact, so I'm always worried about any economic impact. What we want is to see the collective bargaining process work. We want to see these parties work together so that we can actually get to a better outcome, and that will of course alleviate the economic impact, and it'll help the people on the ground that are trying to, raise their families and run their businesses.
And how long can you wait?